Hello and welcome to the Alpha Software Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software. And today I am happy to report that we will be talking about reports. But before we get started, I just want to make sure that you can hear my voice and that you could see my screen. And you see the word reports on the screen right now. If someone could just type into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. Wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Alpha Anywhere has got a really, actually two very powerful report writers built into it. And I had realized we had not spoken about reports in probably a couple of years here at the Demo and Q&A webcast. I may have brought it up during a Transform Tuesday, but I think that's about it. And it's definitely time to rediscover the topic. Now, you might think of reports as sort of an old-fashioned technology. It sort of harkens back to the day of paper, where everything was printed out and mailed and sent off and things like that. But reports are still used today. Sometimes they're just reports that are shown on the screen, are in fact paperless. Sometimes they are paper in the form of documents and things that you do want to store permanently. And what a report lets you do is it lets you take data from a whole bunch of different tables and combine them together to create one output. So today we're going to be taking a look at an invoice report, and I'm going to give you all kinds of information about how to build them, how to format them, how they work, and we'll also be going into some data manipulation stuff as well. But of course, I'm here to answer your questions. Feel free to type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel, or send an email to guides, GUIDES @alphasoftware.com. All right, so let's get started. Here you could see, for example, in my layout, here's a WYSIWYG layout editor of a report that I created, an invoice report. I like doing invoice reports because they're something everyone relates to, and it's got actually a good structure to it by having some tables that are set up in this order. So in this case, we have an order details and a products table, as well as an orders table. The orders table just keeps track of the invoice ID and who it was billed to and things like that. The order details has multiple records for each thing that was purchased on that invoice or ordered on that invoice. There's also a products table which connects a particular product ID to its name and lets you display the name right on the report. And then there's some information about customers. The order table, for example, would have the customer ID, but it wouldn't have the first name, last name, and so on. That's kept in the customers table. So as it's placed here into a report, we've placed them into what are called sections, but they're also sometimes called bands. Anyone who's maybe worked with Crystal Reports or another banded report writer might be familiar with this, but if you're not, don't worry about it. All right, let's go on to the next page. And as you can see here, it is a pretty good, faithful representation of what you built, comes out as an output. In this case, I've done this as an output and took a screenshot of that output. We're going to be using the report writer today that's called the layout table report writer. There's another one called the freeform writer, and the freeform writer is cool in that it lets you have very fine control over how things are positioned on the page. It works great for printing, it works okay for PDF, but the disadvantage to using the freeform as opposed to the type that we'll be using today, the layout table report, is that it doesn't translate easily into an Excel spreadsheet or into HTML. And nowadays, most applications, of course, are web and mobile based, and that's sort of a feature that you'd want, which is why I tend to use this report writer over the other one, although the principles in one are pretty similar to the principles in the other. Once that report has been created, you can then take that report and embed it into a web or mobile application, like I've done here. So for example, I entered in invoice 10262 and I click the generate invoice button, and up pops my invoice here on the screen for me to take a look at. And then I can go print out that invoice and so on. Okay, so that is, that's that. Let's go take a look and see how it's done. And we'll begin by talking about the data. I told you a little bit about the data structure at the beginning of it, but we're going to dive into it a little bit more. And let's go ahead and do that live. So I'm going to hop over to my Windows machine, and we're going to take a look here at the data source. Now, here I am at the Web Projects control panel. If I go up into the Tools menu, I can choose the Database Explorer option, and I can take a look at all of the tables that I have in my database. This is the Northwinds database, or Northwind database. It's been shipping with Alpha for decades, and it shipped with Microsoft Access before then, but it's a great set of sample data. We use it all the time. One thing though I don't love about it is that it's getting old. I mean, the products are fine and everything, but what's happening is the order dates in it, they're all very old. They're from like 1997 or something like that. So I decided that before I even begin my report, it would be fun to just sort of update the data a little bit. And I'm going to do this using some desktop tools. So if you don't have desktop tools, you won't be able to do this part of what I'm going to show you today. And these are built into the full version of the Alpha Anywhere developer. They are not included in the community edition, but I just wanted to show you off, if you have the full edition, that these are some tools that are built in and ready for you to use if you want. So I'm going to take a look at the tables and sets that I have here. This would typically be empty in your control panel if you're building something strictly for web or mobile. But here's a great place to just sort of play around with data and work with it. And what I did here was I created what's called an active link table. I'm going to go ahead and create another one. And I'm going to go to new table. I'm going to create what's called a passive link table. And it's to create a single passive link table. I'm going to click OK on that. One more time. New table, passive link table, create a single passive link table. Yep. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose, I could choose a named data source, but I'm actually not going to do that this time. I'm going to choose an ad hoc structure, and I'm just going to choose the AA Northwind demo. And then in that, I'm going to choose the orders table. There it is. And then I'm going to finish, and I'm going to actually call it orders 3. Orders 3. Okay. So now that my table has been created, I can take a look at the records in it, and you'll see that all of these dates are pretty old. They're back in 1996. So I'm going to do something here. I'm going to go ahead and update these records, and I'm going to be doing that using a built-in operation. So I'm going to take my table that I just have here, the orders table. I'm going to right-click on it. I'm going to say create operation. And here are all these different things that you can do with that table now that you have a local copy of it built, a passive copy of it built here. What I want to do is I want to update those records. So I'm going to choose update as one of the ones. But here are some other ones that are very useful. Export. You can export to different file formats, but you can also export to a SQL database. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. We're going to start by updating the records. So I'm going to say create an update operation. And the field that I'm interested in changing is the order date. So let's go ahead and change that. Right now, if I took a look at that order date field, scroll down here, you'll see that it is from 1996 or so. So I'm going to want to add some years to that, about 27 years actually. So to do that, I'm going to first convert this, as you'll see, it's a time value. I'm going to first convert this into a date. There was sort of no real reason why we were storing it as a date and time, because I believe it was just data to begin with. And we're going to change that into a, I'm going to use my convert date function. And I'm going to change, CONVERT date. Oops, I did something wrong. Oh, convert type. I'm going to use my convert type function. There we go. And I'm going to put in my order date. I'm going to set that to a date field, and you'll see now it's just the date down there at the bottom. Now I want to add some years to it. So I'm going to add 365 days times 27 years. And there we are. We have results that are better. Okay. I'm going to come back here, and we are going to convert this back into a time function, or sorry, a time field, so that it can be put back into our database. So I'm going to turn this back into time, again using the convert type. So now we've changed it. So once I hit OK and I click the run button, it's going to go ahead and update my records. And if I look at my updated records, you will see that I've now updated them all to 2023. Now, let's say I wanted to put those back into my database. I absolutely could do that by going to, I'm not going to say that, but I'm going to go into orders 3, the one that we created. We're going to go back into create an operation, but this time we're going to do an export records operation. So I've clicked on that. And take a look at these two choices. If I want to make this as an Excel file, an ASCII file, or something like that, a CSV, this is the first one I choose, but I'm actually going to use an Alpha database using Alpha DAO, and this means that I can put it to SQL Server, really anything that I have a connection string to, including my SQLite database. So then here, all I do is I choose my connection string, and then I say, okay, I'd like to take this orders 3, and I'd like to put that into my database, and then I run it. And you'll see down here, it's exporting those records, and it's done. And if I want to, I can view the exported table. It shows me the first 100 rows, and sure enough, there it is with the updated order dates. So that is the end of today's desktop lesson. We're going to jump back into reports. So if you do just have the Alpha Anywhere Community Edition, this next section does apply to you again. So we're going to go back into our Web Projects control panel, and we're going to create a report. So I'm going to say new report, and I'm going to say create a new report. By the way, you can also create, these are cool, letters and labels. Labels in particular, I really like. They have a bunch of predefined Avery label sizes, although you can define other label sizes and other brands as you like. And it lets you print out labels really easily on a printer or something like that. We're going to go back here, though, to creating the report, because that's what we're doing today. And we're going to use the SQL data source. And here are the couple of options that I have here. I could do the freeform report, which I talked to you before about, and the layout table report, which is the one that we're going to use today because it has very high fidelity when being translated into HTML, Excel, PDF, and so on. So it is my favorite one to use. Go ahead and click OK. And now here I can either use a named data source or create an ad hoc data source. I've created a named data source already, and I'm going to show you how I defined that. So I did that first by doing it as an ad hoc source, and then I saved it. But let's take a look at my named data source. I used, of course, the Northwind table connection string, of course, so you usually do. But this is what I've done here in the query builder. In the query builder, I've added my orders to table. That's a table that has the updated dates in it. Order details, the products table, and the customers table. These are all from that sample Northwind database. And then I chose a bunch of columns from each one of those tables, which you can see here. And that's really all I had to do for the data source. So I'm going to just say OK. And I'm going to finish. We'll just choose that. That's fine. Now here I can choose how many records I want to retrieve. This is helpful when you're designing a report. You're going to want to preview that report actually repeatedly as you're doing that design. You're going to want to have some sample data in there. My database isn't so big that it's going to be a problem if I retrieve all of the records. So I'm going to leave that at 0. But if I had a database like a SQL data source that had like 1 million records, I might just want to work with the first 100 of them while I'm designing the report. So that's where that happens there. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then what you could see is I have now a blank report, and it's got these sections here, the report section, the details section, and that's about it. Now, if you recall in my original design, or in the design that you saw before, I had an extra section, a group, and I'm going to show you how that works. I'm going to go ahead and add a group here, and right click and say insert group. And the group I want is going to be a change in the order ID, in other words, the order number, okay? And so when the order number changes, I want to move on to the next batch of records. I want to have it grouped this way. So if I did something simple like go to this first column and double click on it and say in it, I want to place this field, this order ID field. Click OK. And then down here in the details section, actually, while we're at it, let's put in another field. Let's put in person's name. Let's say contact name. That's good. All right. And then maybe the date of the order. So go to the field And we're going to say order date. After all, we did just update it, so we may as well see that data. Now, for each thing that they ordered, I want to see the name of the product. So that would be product name. It's here. And I want to see probably, let's just say for now, the quantity that they ordered. This isn't going to be a very thorough report. We'll get into a more thorough one in a bit. So quantity. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now I'm going to go ahead and save this. Order report 3. And now I'm going to go ahead and take a look at it in the preview. So I'm going to click the little preview icon up here. And there is the order ID, the name, the date, the name of the product they ordered, and the quantity, and so on. And you'll see it's all grouped together on a order by order basis. Okay. So that's sort of the gist of how you do the grouping. But when it comes time to formatting and things, this report obviously needs a little bit of help. So let's go take a look and see what we can do. In fact, I'm going to go open up another report. I'm going to open one that I've styled already. We're going to take a look at that. Okay. So here is what I want the report to look like. And here is what I've got right now. So to begin with, I think I want to put in a logo up here at the top right. So I'm going to go ahead and say, basically edit cell content or double click on it. And I'm going to choose an image. And when I do that, you've probably seen this dialog box before. I can choose from some of the built-in images. I can choose a base encoded image, or I could choose an image that I've already added into my project style, which I'm going to do. So I'm going to say select. And if you remember, here are some of the other ones that we've had before. I'm going to use this logo right here, though. Okay. And then I'll click OK. And let's just give us a little bit of room so we can actually see this logo. There we go. Now I can also, let me size the logo as well. I can say, when I've inserted it, static image, sorry. Static image, oh, never mind. Never mind on that, sorry. I'm just gonna leave it like that for now. Put the logo there. I'm gonna move my screen back over here. And over here, I'm gonna wanna say the word invoice. So I could just do that as static text. I could say, I just put spaces in between the letters. Just kind of look cool. And now there it is. But you'll notice, well, a couple things are wrong with it. One is that it's too small and it's left aligned instead of right aligned, and it's the wrong color. So what do we do about that? Well, built into the report editor are some tools that allow us to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and, sorry, let me just move this window out of the way and go into my text. I think this is the text one. And that's turned on my text toolbar, and I can actually drag this down. I can make it separate. I can dock it, whatever I want. I'm going to just make it separate right here. And so now I want to say, okay, this is fine, but I'd like the font size to be something like, I don't know, 26. Well, that's a little too big, 24. And then the color, let's make that gray. Gray at 40%. There we go. So now I have the top line of my report built, but I have some more stuff down here, and it looks like I've run out of rows. That's not really a problem. I just right click and I say insert a row, add new row. And I'm actually going to add 2 rows. The first row is going to be a spacer, just so I have a little bit of space between our logo and whatever I place next. I'll scroll up here, and if you'll see in this one, I'm just going to steal what I did there, but I inserted some cell contents. Actually, let me build this out for you properly. Go back into my other report. We're going to dive into where we have that field, and we're going to do this as HTML instead of static text or a field. So I'm going to choose HTML, edit, and I'm going to say, I tend to skip a line at the beginning, so I'm just going to add a break. We're doing this as HTML now. And I'm going to say build to, we're going to make that bold. Oops. All right. And then underneath that, I put in a break. We are going to put in the company name, contact name, address, city, region, and so on. And I can do that right here using this insert field. So I'm going to insert the company name, put in a break, the contact name, put in a break, the city, comma, the region or state, space, the zip code or postal code. And then finally, I'll put in the country. Now, I'm sure some of you are saying, I don't live in the United States, and this is not at all how I format my address. And you obviously can format it however you like. Oops, I put in the wrong one. But what you can do if you wanted to make it really smart is you can put in what are called format directives or expressions. And what these let you do, is put in if statements. So with an if statement, you could say, if the country was equal to USA, then I want you to format it one way. But if it's equal to, say, UK or some other country, make it a different way. So that you can do that using if statements and stuff. Just something I wanted to point out. It's really a powerful feature. Today, we're not going to bother with that. We're just going to make it really easy. It looks like I've skipped a line, but I'm really not going to worry about that. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now you'll see that that information is in there. Now, if I squish that down, I realize that I've made a mistake. And that mistake, nope, yeah, I did make a mistake actually. My mistake is that I actually want this stuff up here in the top. I don't want a report header. I just want all of this in my group header. So what do? I'm just going to insert, right click, insert a row, add a new row. I'm going to grab this, and I think, if I recall, it lets me move copy row, paste row, paste. There we go. Okay. If you put it in the wrong section, it's not a complete disaster. Right click, copy row. Oh, we'll copy this one too. Oop. I'm stuck. Oh no. Live demo. Give this a second, it'll probably come back. All right, there we go. I can remove this guy. I can remove this guy. And so on. Anyway, I think that you get how these things get put together. So let me take a look though at the one that is finished, and let's just go into details on how we did certain sections of it. So over here, you saw how I put in the image and the text, and you saw how I put in the fields and stuff like that. Putting in the invoice number was very similar, but there was something that I wanted to do differently. So in this section here, if I go ahead and preview this for you, you're going to take a look at the date. The date is going to be, it's this sort of the simple month, day, year format. You'll notice it doesn't have a time component next to it, even though we know in the database that time component is being stored there. And I didn't want that there. So what I wanted to do is instead of putting in the actual date, I wanted to put in a formatted version of the date. And I did that using a calculated field. We're going to show you another calculated field in a second, but let me show you how I built this one. I went up here into the calculated fields section, and I created something. I just typed in clean date equals. And again, I used that convert type, love that function. And I said, change the order date into a date function. So whatever was in the order date, which is a date time, just return it as a date. And once that was in, I was able to add that just like I could add any other field in here. I just say insert, insert field. And then I go down to where it says calc. You can see that. And then I can choose the date that I had created. So that's how I added that in there. This is the same. Product name is a pretty easy one. Here's another calculated field. This is where I've inserted quantity times price. And I was able to do that just simply using an expression this time. So it didn't actually have to be a calculated field. It does the calculation for me right there. And then over here, so that's how I did it for the product name. Let's go ahead and do a print preview so we can take a look at that. So you'll see that's multiplying out the quantity times the price to give us the right quantity here. You'll also notice, though, that this has got a $ next to it. I've decided to format that using the US currency symbol. I'm going to close that. And let me just show you how that's done, because you're going to very frequently want to format, especially numbers that are coming out, but you might want to format other things as well. To do that, I went down into display formatting. I said edit formatting, and I can choose from predefined formats. There's a whole bunch of them here. These are the kind like you might use on a check or something like that if you're printing out checks. I don't know what you use those for. The format I chose, though, was this one here. There's also international currency format where you can choose the country and it will give you all of the, let you build out the necessary expression for that as well. I'm going to leave that alone though. All right. So now that that's in, that's how we did that row. So the next one was the total. And the total is pretty similar to how we did the quantity times price, but if I double click in here, you'll see again, I've done quantity times price. But this time when I went down here, I had an option because I was in a footer called summarization. By default, this is just set to value. It just looks like that. But if you go down to here and you set it to total, it'll total everything in that detail section and it'll give me the answer there. And that's how we got it to perform the total for us. This last section, just simply blank text, static text with a field in it. There's really nothing particularly special about that. And that's really all it took to build out this report. Now, once the report is built, now what? Well, at this point, you're probably going to want to use it in an application, of course. So let's go ahead and close this. And now we're going to head over to our web components. And actually, we're going to build a new web component. May as well start this from scratch. Files. I'm just going to say new web component, and we'll do a UX component. Okay. So here I am in the UX, and in the example that I showed you before, I was able to enter in a particular invoice number, and based on that invoice number, it gave me just that one invoice back. We're going to do that in a second, but first we're just going to make something really simple. We're just going to have a button that prints out the report, just period. So let's go ahead and just add a button, add a control. I'm going to type in button. Okay. And I'm going to say generate invoice. Okay. And we'll go ahead and double click on that button so that we can define it. And we're going to do it using Action JavaScript. And this is really cool. This is such a huge time saver, as you'll see in a second. The Action JavaScript I want falls in the category of reports, and I want it to open or email a report letter. I want to open it in this case, so I'm going to choose OK. And now all I have to do is choose the report name, which I'm going to do. And it's this one here, my styled report. And I'm not going to set any arguments or filters just yet. We'll get there in a second, though. This is actually pretty key. I'm just going to say OK on that. Initial view PDF, that's fine. In other words, how do you want it to appear? You can have it appear as a PDF, or you can have it appear as HTML. I'm going to do PDF because I'm imagining that this invoice is probably going to want to be printed, and PDFs are very good for printing. Okay, display PDF using PDF viewer control. I don't think I checked that last time. I'd like to experiment with that one. I haven't really tried that. And I think that's all I need. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I'm not going to name it. I'll just go ahead and click save. And let's go ahead and save this component. Invoice, we'll call it. And let's see what the button does. Oh, I do have security on, so I'm going to say always allowed for this one. That's fine. And let's go into working preview. And there's my button. I'm going to click that button. And in a moment, oh, it's slow today. Hang on while it processes 830 records. Boy, that is slow. No, there's something's going on here. It's not, that should be done by now. Oh, no biggie. I'm just going to kill alpha. Oh, just as it was, okay. All right, just as I'm threatening it. Okay, so here it is. Oh, it's an 831 page PDF. All right, so that's fair because it's literally all of the invoices, right? You'll see I can scroll through them all here. And what's cool about this control is it lets you do things like you can download it. You could send it to a printer. If I hit print, it's going to show you the printers that are on my network. If you're on a phone, you could do this using AirPrint or something like that. I believe this just, and this is if you have it set up to display landscape, you might want to switch the view. I'm not going to do that though. Whoops. Okay, cool. This window is movable, it's scrollable. It's got a title, which right now is just window, which is terrific. So let's just start doing some modifications here, make this a little bit more useful. I'm going to go back into design. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the ability to filter. So I want to just be able to look for maybe a customer at a time, or let's just do it an invoice at a time like I did before. So let's add a text box, and we're going to call this invoice. Invoice, labels invoice. There we go. And I'll move that up so that there's the invoice number, there's the button. While I'm here, just because it always bugs me, the standard style button, I'm going to add a button. I'm going to change the class of this button here. Subtheme. I happen to like, so base, primary. Primary is the one I like. I like having buttons that are square and don't just look like text links. Sorry, that's just me. All right, now I've added a field and I have the button, but the button still doesn't know anything about the field. So let's go ahead and edit our script. Sorry, our action JavaScript. And this time we're going to add in to our report, we're going to add in a filter. And we're going to add in a filter, but we're going to use something called an argument. An argument is a way to allow your web interface to safely pass data back to Alpha in a way that prevents what are called SQL injection attacks. SQL databases are really powerful, but sometimes they're really easy. Someone learned a long time ago to hack and to have data come out of it that you don't want to come out of it using something called SQL injection. That's where someone puts in a value, like let's say it said name equals, and it was supposed to be Dave, but it said name equals quote, and then some nefarious code at the end. It's very possible that some SQL systems would actually execute that code. This is the primary reason we use arguments. So we're going to set an argument. We're going to create an argument. And they don't take long to build. And it's going to be a numeric, because I happen to know that the invoice IDs are numeric. And we're going to call this invoice. It's the name of my argument. And I'll say OK. And now what we're going to do here is we're going to build a filter. And we're going to say I'm only interested in records in which the order ID is equal to, I'm going to insert field from insert argument. It's equal to that. Okay, so the SQL now knows only take it from an argument, and I only want the things that come back with this invoice number. We now need to set this argument's value. We do it by selecting it, choosing set argument value, and we're going to insert our text field that we just put on there, the invoice field. Okay, so when I fill in invoice, it's going to set that argument, and that argument is going to get used in the SQL filter when I click the button. We hope. Let's give it a shot. We'll save that again. You don't really have to save before you go to working preview. That's just one of my things that I do. All right, so invoice number 10262. Don't worry, I wrote that one down. And there we go. As you can see, it's just one page this time. And you'll see it's been filtered down to include just this one record. So if you could imagine that maybe this wasn't as simple a interface as just simply a button and a text control, maybe it was a list with all of your customers or all of their invoices, and you wanted to add, you could add a button to it which says, generate that invoice, and that's how you do it. Now the last thing I want to fix though is right up here where it says window. That looks sloppy. I want to give it either a generic name or a more informative title, like maybe display the invoice number in there would be cool. So I can do that. I'm going to go back into the design menu and I go take a look at that button, take a look at that action. And then as we scroll down here, and this is one of these dialog boxes that's got so many options that we actually put a search. So I'm going to say, I believe it's called window title. See that that's set to window. Now I can insert, if I wanted to, field names. So I can say invoice, and then I'm going to put in invoice ID. I think I called it invoice ID. Let's see. What did I call it? I called it invoice. I did that wrong. Hang on. Scroll down to my window title. Sorry, my field name is just invoice. Might be nice to add a date field picker to that at some point. We're going to go ahead and click OK. Click save. Let's save again. Let's take a look at working preview. And put in that same value again, 10262. And there it is. So pretty cool. Now I could have another button which had me look up people by, say, customer ID or something like that, and it could display multiple invoices. I just simply need to change the filter to do that. But I've shown you everything. I've shown you how to do a calculated field. Let's take a look back in the report editor. Control panel, reports. All right, quick review. Showed you how to insert an image, how to format using the text controls, which if they're not being displayed, they can be turned on and off here. I've shown you how to add insert fields, HTML objects, summary values, arguments. Oh, the other thing, actually, there is one last thing I want to show you because this might drive you bonkers looking for it. If you're in here and you have decided, for example, that you want to move your text over, like when I put in this image, it had a little bit of a border here on the left. I guess I could have moved it, but I decided instead what I wanted to do is sort of move all of these things in here. I was able to do that by setting the properties on that. So let me just say properties. And if you go down here, it tells you what to do if you can't find it. You could say show panel. There's my properties panel. Oh, and that should populate here in a second. There we go. And you'll see what I did here was I added some padding to this, and I did that down here under layout. Here's where you can make all kinds of adjustments to the padding. You can decide whether it should stick to the top or the bottom. You can set fonts, colors, italics, orientation, all kinds of stuff. So all that is really good stuff to know here when you're doing formatting of your HTML pieces. All right, so I think that that's all I was planning to cover today. Let's see what we've got. By default. All right, where'd it go? That's weird. Well, let's take this one. This one is center justified at the moment. If we wanted to make it left or right justified, again, we're just going to use the text toolbar here. I'm going to turn that on. And whoops, it's down here. Come on. And then I could just simply use the right, align right, and align left, right, center. So that's how you do that. Okay, let's see what else we've got here for questions. Oh, this is very interesting. Someone says, I have a report that I print on a pre-printed form. Okay, that's pretty cool. The data has to go into specific boxes, fine, but because it's a multi-tenant app, is it possible to allow the end user to make minor adjustments programmatically to the top and left margin to ensure that the data lands in the appropriate location? Well, the way I could imagine doing that would be in here. Like, let's say, for example, I guess it varies from form to form, but you needed, for example, to move this in to the right or move it up or move it down or something like that. But you didn't know how much. You wanted to be able to set that programmatically. Right here, if you could somehow get those variables, in other words, let the user provide an interface for the user to enter that data. Once you get in here, you can start using basically the formatting directives, and you could say if for example this, add that much to it. It's probably another way of doing that as well, now that I think about it. That's a good one. You want to send that one in to guides@alphasoftware.com? It's sort of interesting. That would be one for us to take a look at. Appreciate it. Let's see what else we've got here. Question about alpha launch. In the register and alpha launch server entry, what is wanted for the server name and server URL? Server name and server URL for alpha launch should be where you have the Alpha Anywhere web components that aren't, in other words, the part that your app is going to make callbacks to, I believe is the thing you're looking at. If that's not the answer to the question, send it over to guides@alphasoftware.com. We've got someone who spends a ton of time working on alpha launch, so I'm sure I can get that question answered pretty quickly. Someone said I forgot the address. Yeah, I totally did. Oh yeah, let's see what the PDF viewer option does. Yes, that's a good question. Let's go take a look. Let's go back into my report, or I'll go back into the form. Sorry. Cancel out of here. We'll close this. Let's see what that button does, what that option does. Okay, PDF using the PDF viewer control. I see it shows in an iframe, otherwise it'll be interesting. Let's take a look. All right. Ooh, very nice. I rather like this. Looks like it respects my window title. It has search capabilities. Fit to page. You can size it. Scroll through the pages. Hey, this is pretty cool. That might be an option worth checking. Thanks for asking about that. Very neat. All right, so do we have any other questions? That should do it, looks like. Wonderful. Well, again, everyone knows where to send them. Guides@alphasoftware.com. Thank you very much, everyone, for showing up today. Really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you next week. In the meantime, keep those questions coming. Take care and stay well. Bye-bye.